Hey guys, it's me Hovik, and this week we are going to be talking about the magic of altars. Now, I find this to be an interesting topic, and I wanted to cover it because I get in touch with a lot of people who come to me and tell me about how do I set up an altar? What is an altar exactly? What is it? What's your altar like, and what all this stuff is. So I want to do this video real quick to explain to people kind of the ins and outs about the altar, what it's used for, and kind of the do's and don'ts, a little bit of the do's and don'ts on the altars. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about what exactly an altar is. Now, an altar is a place to contain your cosmology and all your sacred magical tools. It's a place to connect with your gods and your goddesses by acting as a portal of mediation. That's what an altar is. An altar is a physical representation of a spiritual cosmology, concept, idea, universe, world, what have you, made manifest here and now in the physical plane. It's a place to make offerings to different spirits. It's making offerings to your ancestors, people who have passed before you, and leaving offerings to them that you maybe call upon when you need help with something or magically, what have you. It's a place to do that sort of work. It can be small, it can be large, it can be very simple, it can be very complex. This is all you and your personal preference. And because, like I said, an altar is something that is living, breathing, kind of growing as you grow, it'll expand and change over time. So don't feel like you need to kind of get everything all set up right at once. And if you don't have it set up right away with all the bells and whistles, that you're somehow missing out on the experience, or that somehow it's not an altar. It's not true. The simplest altar, honestly, can be nothing more than a flat surface, whatever that may be, with a candle and a rose. Now, we place candles on the altar because candles illuminate, candles bring light, and they also bring fire is the essence of spirit. It warms us, it gives us life. It's that divine spark. It's like kind of bringing down the heavens, the light of the heavens, onto your altar. So it's used, as like I said, as an illuminating spirit, as an illuminating force to illuminate spirits, to also act as a portal for them to kind of come through, or rather as a doorway, not as a portal. The altar is a portal. The candle acts as a doorway. So that's what the candle represents. It's kind of a way to call the spirits in and to invoke them and whatnot. Now, the rose is another thing that you can incorporate, like a real living rose, obviously, in a vase or a glass, what have you. Because for me, and for a lot of people, roses, signify love. And they also represent beauty and harmony within the universe. And that's what the universe is all about. The universe is beauty and harmony and love. That's the three main kind of things that are very important to many different magical systems, including my own. So the rose, again, acts as a physical representation of a manifestation of love, harmony, and beauty right there on the altar. And again, that acts as something that you can use to connect with physical things. It's also an aspect of nature. It allows for you to connect to the nature spirits, and to the land, and to the spirits that work within that. So that's another reason why we use the rose, or any flower, to be honest. But I like the rose especially because it holds a little bit more weight within a magical tradition. So here are some do's and don'ts kind of on how altars should be and whatnot. Obviously, do incorporate items associated with different gods and goddesses, whether that be statues or pictures or other objects that are sacred and special to those particular spirits that you work with. If it's an ancestral altar, then I would include objects that were loved or used by that person who had passed, or the persons. If there are multiple people on the altar, then I would include ancestral items that way. Like my personal ancestral altar has many different things on there that are related to different ancestors that I work with over time, and so it has kind of bits and pieces from there all the way. Do also feel free to decorate your altar according to the seasons. Now, obviously, again, like I was talking about before, the altar is a living energetic force that's kind of made there manifesting. So it's always growing and changing with what's going on in the heavens and the earth. So again, incorporating some of that into your space helps to draw that energy in. So, in the wintertime or the summertime, decorate with lots of summery objects. In the spring, lots of spring colors, pastels, and eggs, and seedlings, and little bits and pieces like that. Pictures of things that are very cute and fertile, what have you. And then again, throughout the year, you would kind of change it out. In the fall, you put, gourds and, dried leaves and things like that. And then, people love decorating for Halloween. It's the same thing. You can put pumpkins and witches and spiders and a cauldron, what have you, and place those objects on there to, again, invoke those energies within that space that you've created, to then, again, allow for you to access that on a more personal level by drawing it in with those objects. Again, for wintertime, same thing, decorate it with Christmas objects, so put little twinkle lights and holly and maybe a small Christmas tree or what have you, presents, little bits and pieces there, acorns, a Yule log, what have you, different things like that. So that's another thing that you can do. Do also use it as a place to store other magical items that you have, or sacred tools, and a place to also charge objects. Now, me personally, what I do is that my altar is actually a cabinet type of thing. So it has the flat space on top where I have my main altar and all my sacred objects on top and my deities and whatnot. And then it also has 2 cabinets underneath where I store all my magical kind of bits and pieces. So like all my herbs, my crystals, my oils, paper, ink, what have you, all that kind of goes underneath. So that's what goes underneath. But on top of the altar is where you would place your magical tools. So like your athame, your wand, a chalice or a cauldron, or singing bowls, large crystals that you might work with, maybe things like that. That's what I would talk about with sacred objects. And again, it's also a place to charge objects as well, because again, it's a portal to spirit. It is drawing in universal energy, so it's a good place to charge up objects, to also cleanse and purify objects as well. So place those on there as well. Another thing that you should also include on an altar is some sort of small dish and or cup or glass container to put food offerings and liquid libations to the spirits and to the god and goddess that you work with. I have one of those on my altar at all times, of course. So when I go out and have a feast or celebration and there's a libation after or what have you, then I'll take a little bit of that food, save it, and leave it on the altar and put it on the altar before I consume my own food and my own libation prior. So it's a good way to, again, make offerings to those spirits and work with them that way. Now with that as well, a lot of people sometimes ask me about, well, what do I do with those offerings? Do I leave them away? Do I leave them there indefinitely, or do I take them away? I don't know what to do. It's rotting. I don't know what to do. Be practical, obviously. Spirits aren't after the physical food or liquid or flowers or whatever that you left as an offering. They take the energy from it. That's what they're using. So you'll feel and you'll see, obviously, as soon as it starts to kind of rot or fall away or what have you, that's when you know it's kind of done. The spirit has taken what it needs to. And at that point, you can then take your little offering dish and your offering glass or what have you and properly dispose of it. I like to take mine outside and bury it in the earth. And that's kind of what I will do if it's like a food offering or things like that. If it's an object, I tend to bury it as well, depending on what the object is, or I might kind of leave it to nature in a different way. So that's another thing too. And then with that as well, don't place mundane items on your altar. So don't leave your car keys and loose change and receipts and trash and things like that on your altar. Again, this adds clutter and is not conducive to spiritual work, obviously. The altar is a place separate outside of your mundane world, so it shouldn't include any of those things within that altar. So there. Also, making sure that, again, your altar is always clean. That's another most important thing, too, is always make sure that your altar is clean physically and not messy and scattered. If you feel like there's too much on your altar, cut back and take some things away. If you're not using different objects and what have you, make sure that you do, replace them or change them out or put them away if you're not using them. Because it just adds to clutter, and you don't want to have a physically cluttered altar space, because that energetically will clutter you and make it harder for the spirits to connect to you on a personal level. So always make sure note that as well, when your altar looks like it's getting really messy and cluttered and dirty and dusty, again, that might be a time, kind of a nudge to you to say, hey, you're kind of missing some of the stuff that we were talking about, and you're losing your touch and your connection to us. So go in and clean your altar. I clean my altar about 3 times a year, as a heavy clean on top of the regular maintenance that I do on a regular basis to keep it clean from offerings and bits and pieces, candle wax, what have you. So that's a little bit about altars. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment box below, and I will answer them, of course. You can follow me here. Please do subscribe and follow me on different social media places. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Periscope at HG Magic. If If you missed any of this, I will put it all in the link below. So I will talk to you guys next week. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.